Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. All right, this week we had the 6th Democratic debate. Let's knock this out quickly. My guess right now is that the Democratic presidential nominee will be one of these three people. Let's start with Biden. They beat him up. People still like him. He's still in the race. He's still doing well, even though his kid is an absolute moron. Can you imagine how that talk went? Hey, Hunter, I'm running for president just this once. Try not to do anything stupid. Don't screw this up for me. No problem, Dad. 5 minutes later. The news is now reporting that Hunter Biden was cheating on his brother's widow with some chick out of Arizona who he decided to screw without protection and is now his baby mama. In other news, he just married an Instagram model. Mayor Pugh. He did really well, and it looks like he's now leading in the polls in Iowa and starting to surge in New Hampshire. He's moving to the center quickly after testing the edges in previous debates, and he's actually starting to sound like Klobuchar did throughout all of these debates. Warren. She did really well with her time, as she always does, and was a commanding presence on stage. Nevertheless, the numbers on her Medicare for All plan do not add up, and she's also really grating people with the idea that she's going to be forcing this policy on everyone. The big question for her remains, can she actually win these swing states as a Massachusetts liberal? My guess is probably not. So now on to the others. Klobuchar. I think by far this was her best night yet. I still don't think it's enough. I think it's too little too late, but she did a great job representing the needs and desires of women, of fiscal responsibility, and of moderate policy. Yang. He's being suppressed by the Democratic Party even as he continues to rise in the polls. They're basically Bernieing him, and they're not going to let him win this thing even if he does. Bernie. It's just not happening. He pushes the issues well. He has a massively popular fan base, but he's not going to win this primary. And when he doesn't win, I'm not entirely sure that he won't run as an independent. Booker. He had a good debate. I think right now he's the #1 spot for VP. He damaged Biden badly when they started discussing the black vote and opened up the door for something that right now is very popular with the Democratic Party, and that's the legalization of marijuana. Harris. She did better, but no one likes her. Tulsi Gabbard. The Democrats have essentially decided she's a Russian plant, so she has no chance. But we're still going to enjoy the ride while it lasts. Steyer. Wait, was Steyer there? So that's it for last night's debate. We look forward to 37 more.
The British Duke of York, Prince Andrew, has stepped down from his responsibilities for the foreseeable future. This comes as a result of growing criticism surrounding his relationship with the recently murdered Jeffrey Epstein. A recent interview he did nothing to quell public ire and labeled him as having a perceived lack of empathy for the Epstein victims. Additionally, Prince Andrew is facing a lawsuit from Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who says that the prince and her had sex multiple times when she was 17 and working for Epstein. Prince Andrew has denied ever knowing the girl. He stepped down from his duties on Wednesday after releasing a statement saying that the Queen gave him his blessing to do so. He also had to step down as British trade envoy for criticism surrounding him and Epstein back in 2011 when Epstein was first convicted of child sex offenses.
Impeachment. We've had a lot of spicy witnesses this week, and frankly, I don't want to go through all of them. We've had Lieutenant Colonel Vindman come in and paint a picture of a quid pro quo with the Ukraine. He was then extolled as a hero by the left and demonized by the right as a piece of crap Ranger School chow thief. But rather than get into the nitty-gritty about everybody that stood before Congress this week, I want to editorialize a little bit about Fiona Hill. Ms. Hill was the person that I would characterize as the adult in the room this week when it comes to this whole impeachment process. She raised the same concern that George Washington did upon stepping down from his second term as president, and that's the concern about partisanship. Partisanship has become so absurd that I want to take the time to try to explain how ridiculous it's become. This week, Ken Starr, the investigator during the Clinton impeachment trial, did an interview. The headlines and articles were completely different based on the news source. I don't mean a little bit. I don't mean there was a little spin one way or the other. I mean completely different. Fox ran with the opening quote of, "We're nowhere near an impeachable offense." Meanwhile, Yahoo ran with, impeachment expert Ken Starr says Trump is in deep trouble. And it continued this way across 7 or 8 different sources that all gleaned something completely different from exactly the same interview. Liberal sources claim that the president is screwed, and conservative sources are claiming victory. How is that even possible? And this is now playing out in literally everything that we do. Here's another example every week. Every week, at least a few people either make a comment on our posts or send us personal messages that basically say, you guys can't just report down the middle, you have to pick a side, you're being cowards or whatever. They use other words, but we're not going to say them here. Well, what we're trying to do here is deliver the truth to the best of our estimation. We're trying to report the news the way that it used to be reported, but with a little bit of comedy. We don't run off of talking points. We look at the information. We try to figure out what is actually happening. We try to tell you. Anyway, going back to Ms. Hill. She is a high-level State Department bureaucrat. I don't know her, but if I was going to guess, she was the smartest person in the room during that trial. She warned in no uncertain terms that Russia absolutely tried to meddle in the last election and is trying to meddle in this election, and that we should be raising warning bells and all Americans should be getting around the idea that Russia should not have any place in our elections. And she's very concerned that the spinning that occurs in the media is hampering our ability to know what the truth is anymore. Since I'm editorializing, I'll tell you my opinion. After President Trump won the last election, the Democrats tried to paint a picture that without Russian intervention, he would not have won, instead of acknowledging that maybe they had a shitty candidate and ran a terrible campaign. Trump's ego was bruised because they were trying to tarnish his hard-fought victory, and he tripled down on the idea that Russia was not involved at all, and once he committed to that, he wasn't going to change his mind. Then everyone's respective media partners decided to paint a narrative and ran with that narrative, and then most of us decided to parrot whatever narrative was closest to our worldview. So instead of solving a very simple problem that we should all be able to get behind, we're just arguing over whether there's a problem. My opinion is that President Trump would have won the last election without Russian intervention, and that Russia is going to continue to try to cause problems in our election process the way they always have. The Cold War is not over for Russia. Mitt Romney brought this concept up and brought up the threat that Russia poses for us, and the guy was absolutely made fun of as a result of it. He's looking pretty smart now. Russia cannot compete with us economically or militarily, so what do they have left? They have propaganda, and in this area they excel in a way that we don't. We need to acknowledge this threat and defeat it, period. Ms. Hill also painted a picture of the ambassador and his associated team being incompetent and running outside of normal State Department channels, which threatened years of hard work. This also seems completely believable. The president hired a lot of people with no diplomatic experience that are used to doing business a certain way. They're deal makers, not policy makers, and they're used to getting shit done. And in their minds, the State Department is essentially an annoyance. And the ambassador's actual testimony corroborated her opinion. He basically said, well, I told the president, so why do I have to involve the State Department? This is the diplomat to the Ukraine that has to work with the State Department in the Ukraine, because these people have been doing this job for a long, long time and are actually experts. And I'm betting the same thing is true with the president's call. My guess, and it's only a guess because I certainly wasn't there, is that the president's call was absolutely a quid pro quo, but also that the president probably doesn't know any of the rules associated with what he is and is not allowed to say to various heads of state. And I also don't think he cares what the rules are. He wants the results that he wants, and he exerts pressure in accordance with those desires, as he has his entire life. This is the way the man does business. So what's going to happen? The same thing that I said was going to happen 3 months ago. The Democrats primarily did this to hurt Trump during the election. They're going to drag out the House investigation for as long as possible to keep this a critical talking point. Then they're going to vote for impeachment. The Senate is going to hold a short trial and then find the president innocent. Trump is going to market the hell out of his victory and use it as a leg up, in addition to the strongest economy we've had in ages, to get a real boost going into the election. Meanwhile, the Democrats have systematically destroyed the most electable guy that they have in their stable in Joe Biden. Buttigieg or Warren is probably going to win the primary, and then Trump's probably going to beat either one of those by a larger margin than he won the first time. And then, according to Twitter, there will be riots all across America. Or there'll just be a lot of crying and bitchy social media posts.
Former Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh is accused of multiple federal crimes, including defrauding the U.S., wire fraud, and tax evasion. Here's how it breaks down. Pugh released a series of children's books called Healthy Holly. She then sold these books to a public health care nonprofit, which she was on the board of. She was on this board while she was still a state senator. After Pugh was paid for these books, thousands of those books were reportedly undelivered. 2 of her employees were also accused, and both of them have taken plea deals. One of them, Gary Brown Jr., admitted to wire fraud. He cashed the money that Pugh got for her books and then used the money to pay off her debts and contribute to her campaign. They used fake donors to distribute tens of thousands of dollars from the book sales to avoid paying taxes. Brown then falsified documents to the IRS to cover up the wire fraud. The other employee, Rosalind Weddington, admitted to dodging federal taxes and attempted to cover it up for Pugh. Pugh is expected to turn herself in to U.S. federal marshals ahead of her hearing, where she's probably going to do some serious jail time. She may also be expected to pay nearly $1 million from the fraudulent book sales. No comments have come from Pugh or her legal team. They only stated that they will wait to address the matters in court.
Air Force Chief Master Sgt Grove Grove has been awarded the Silver Star for saving the Special Forces team he was attached to. While on patrol attached to an ODA, they were ambushed and then separated, and a contingent of their team was in danger of being overwhelmed. Chief Master Sgt Grove moved to a vantage point where he could pour on some close air support and help defeat the advancing force. His actions initially earned him the Bronze Star for Valor, but after review, the Air Force and the greater military awarded him the Silver Star. Chief Master Sgt Grove, you are officially immune to the words Chair Force.
I can't believe I am actually saying this, but Jussie Smollett has filed a countersuit against the city of Chicago. Smollett claims that authorities maliciously prosecuted him after his fake racial attack hoax back in January. The suit filed says he was maliciously prosecuted in bad faith and that the charges filed against him were without probable cause. To quickly recap, police responded to a 911 call from Smollett, who said that 2 men beat him up, tied a rope around his neck, poured some bleach over him, and shouted, "Miguel!" In short time, it was revealed that Smollett had hired 2 Nigerian brothers to beat him up. Unlike his original description, they were not white. The 2 brothers later confirmed this to the police. Smollett was later indicted on 16 counts by a grand jury, which included felony disorderly conduct. Then the charges were mysteriously dropped by the prosecution, whose team lead was later exposed to having personal correspondence with Smollett and his team. So Smollett was given some community service and told that he had to forfeit his $10,000 bond. The entire country gasped a collective what the fuck. Chicago PD wasn't having it though, and they filed a suit against him basically for all the crap and aggravation surrounding all the hoax. A federal judge ruled that the lawsuit could proceed. So now Smollett is countersuing.
Iranian protests continue. Since the protests began, Amnesty International says 106 people have been killed. Protests have been ongoing since a fuel subsidy was cut and fuel prices jumped 3x because of U.S. sanctions. Additionally, the country of Iran has shut down the internet, essentially removing any information flow going in or out of the country. Thus far, Iran's government has cited rioters as the reason for this shutdown and is claiming that they are the reason why lethal force has had to be used. As far as when they're going to return internet access, government officials say they're going to do it as soon as they're sure it won't be misused. That sounds a lot like never, folks.
Colin Kaepernick held a workout in front of 24 team scouts in an unprecedented opportunity to get back into the NFL after 3 years away. Correction, Colin Kaepernick canceled the workout an hour before it was supposed to go off and then rescheduled it for a place an hour away. He did this because he wanted more media control at the workout. 8 of the original 24 scouts decided to drag themselves along to the other workout. After throwing the football, Kaepernick made some sort of speech. Most people are calling it a publicity stunt and a colossal waste of time. Props to Colin though, he may not want to play football anymore, but he's a great marketer.
According to the State Department, the United States has inked a $1 billion deal with India to sell naval weapons. The Mark 45 gun system is supposed to improve the security of a strategic national partner. So we've got that going for us, which is nice. Eric Swalwell just lit up a fart on national TV this week, and it was glorious. It's the biggest contribution he's made to politics in a long time.
Currently, the devil's lettuce remains illegal at the federal level, but 11 states have legalized it recreationally. This week, a measure to legalize marijuana passed the House Judiciary Committee in what is called a Congressional Committee First. It would reportedly remove criminal penalties for marijuana, take the drug off the federal controlled substance list, and expunge conviction records. It's a big deal for furthering the legalization initiative, but I'll be blunt. It still has a long way to go before it's puff passed to the House floor and then put up in the Senate.
The state of Nevada has reached a tipping point in its water supply. This is the result of over-appropriation and over-pumping in Nevada's water basin. In other words, the squeeze just isn't bringing the juice. State officials have proposed a number of solutions, but none of them are easy to implement. A pipeline proposed through eastern Nevada has met with heavy opposition. Also, Nevada has proposed funding a desalination plant in California in exchange for the water rights to the Colorado River. No hard stops have been placed on either proposal yet, as the situation is still fluid.
It's flooding in Venice, Italy. The worst it's been in half a century. The historic city has gotten up to 6 feet of water, and the government response has sucked. Many are upset that the barrier system designed to hold specifically this type of flooding back that they've been working on for 16 years hasn't been completed yet. To those residents, I say, I've got a dig I want to sell you in Boston. With the resident population in Venice dwindling, it's getting harder for everyone who lives there to safeguard the entire city. A proposal for a more centralized Venice city government has been put forward that would be separate from the mainland government. But thus far, it's seen no movement. All this has left the local Venetians saying, "What are you waiting for?"
In future news, the guards responsible for watching Jeffrey Epstein have killed themselves next week. This comes after both were charged by a federal grand jury this week of basically screwing up real bad. According to reports, both guards sat on their computers surfing the internet and slept rather than checking on Epstein every 30 minutes as ordered. To cover for their dereliction of duty, both guards signed forms that said they had committed all checks as outlined. The night Epstein was murdered, nobody checked on him from 10:30 p.m. till 6:30 a.m. On Tuesday, the Bureau of Prisons Director Kathleen Hawks Sawyer has outlined that they are looking into whether a criminal enterprise was engaged in this situation. It's a step in the right direction of proving what everyone already knows: Epstein didn't kill himself. In other future news, Department of Prisons Director Kathleen Hawks Sawyer was killed next week.
The standoff between Hong Kong police and the Hong Kong protesters has died down considerably after a number of students have surrendered to police after storming the universities. It is reported that many of the students walked out while some of them were taken out on stretchers and others in wheelchairs. The biggest event now will be this weekend when a mass of district council seats are up for grabs at the ballots. These seats have been largely dominated by the pro-establishment camp, but this is an opportunity for the pro-democracy camp to legitimize their initiative. At this point, Hong Kong is in its 23rd week of protests.
And finally, in Florida Man news, a 73-year-old Florida man robbed a bank and demanded he be given less money. Old Sandy Hawkins decided he wanted to check that bucket list box by robbing a bank. He walked into a Wells Fargo bank, donned a Donald Trump t-shirt, and demanded that the cashier hand him $1,100. That's when the cashier counted out $2,000 in $100 bills. Sandy Hawkins told him this was too much money and again asked for $1,100. The teller gave Hawkins the money and he went to the wind. Sandy was discovered at a local sports bar that identified him as a regular. When the police showed up, Sandy said, "I'll make this easy," and handed them a bank slip that said on it, "Give me $1,100, no alarms, I hope I get caught." Hawkins' old landlord described him as affable and said he probably reached his breaking point when his wife died in 2013. Well, damn, I kind of hope Sandy's okay. I mean, what's $1,100 in the big scheme of things? Hang in there, Sandy, you magnificent bastard. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And as always, I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and never forget that Hollywood tried to cast Julia Roberts as Harriet Tubman.